Call the meeting to order. So at this time on the agenda today, this is a special meeting, and the special meeting, the purpose is to discuss programming of the 1916 City Hall and the Fire EMS Station. So at this time, Kelly, do you have anything to say before we turn it over to Vance?
Staff has been working diligently with staff with Trainer, and we have Chris, and he's done an excellent job working with us, and he'll be presenting what programming they have came up with.
Okay. Chris, if you would come to the podium, and we'll turn the portion of the discussion over to you at this time.
Is that the next slide? It's working. Good. Hi, my name is Chris Parkenmeyer. I'm with Trainer HL Architects. Our office is 1811 Baltimore Avenue, Kansas City, Missouri. And thank you guys for the special session. I appreciate it. Kind of what we want to do today is take you through all the things we've been doing. Walk through the City Hall, look at all the floors, what the spaces we feel that they're going to be used for, how it worked out, how we've got our departments, and how we're going to interact with the public, and then go through some cost for that building. And then secondly, go to the fire station and kind of do the same thing. And then we'll look at cost at the end of that. If there's any questions, you guys can ask at any time.
So do you prefer us to ask questions as we go through, or
that would
wait
be
to the end?
Questions throughout the process is the best.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Right. So the image, and I'm going to use the images up there as best I can to explain these areas. Right now, that's kind of an image of the site. I know you guys know what it looks like. We're proposing that a lot of the parking be on the north side of the building, some private, some secure, and then some public, with some accessible spaces right in front of the building. I know the existing entrance, and I believe north is up on that, is on the east side of the building, which is the old historic entrance. We're proposing that the new one's going to be on the north side to kind of help facilitate movement for the public in and out of the building. We are proposing a sally port for police functions that would be on the south side of the building, which is kind of used right now for some parking and maybe old fire station or apparatus. I know that's hard to read, and so we're going to zoom in on all these areas, but what this image does is kind of shows how all these floors stack on each other. So the floor plan on the right is the lower level. The one on the top right is the main level. The lower left is the second floor, and then the upper left is the kind of third floor of the building. It's a little bit hard to read as well, but there's also a legend on the left, and all of those colors kind of represent departments. So each different department, it has its own color and association. If it's a dark wall, it's a new wall. If it's a real light wall, it's existing. So I thought we could start in the basement, the lowest level. You can kind of see the yellow color in the middle of the floor. That is all existing corridors and existing walls. And we're trying to maintain that throughout so that we keep a lot of the historic significance of what's there and kind of reuse it. On this level, we've got 2 locker rooms, men's and women's, on the north side of the plan. We've got a break room on the south side. We've got some other support functions for the patrol and some building systems as well.
Are those in the locker room, are those indicating lockers?
Yes.
For which department?
The patrol.
Patrol?
So a lot of the patrol personnel, they don't really have an office or a place to keep anything. So that locker's, it's kind of a deluxe locker, if you will. We're showing something that's about 2 feet wide and 3 feet deep. Has a nice drawer on the bottom of it, places for them to keep all their personal items. They can charge flashlights in there. They could charge phones in those lockers, things like that. It's kind of their space when they're in the building.
Everything blue is police. So if you see
Okay.
blue, it designates police department.
Yeah, the legend was too small
Yeah, yeah.
to read.
So, yeah, the blue is police.
So the yellows kind of, we'll call that I don't want to call it public, like public on the people like me coming in there, but it would be a common space for the building, the people that are in the building, if you will. We do know that there's got to be security, like that exterior doors you see on the east side, they're existing, you kind of go down a set of stairs. I'm assuming we're going to keep those functioning.
Point of reference, I think that you mean west.
I mean west, yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank
So those doors are going to stay functioning, but they'll be secured. So I think the patrol, they come to the station, they use those doors to kind of go to work, go to their locker rooms, get ready for their day, and then they'll go upstairs where they'll have a roll call type room.
The number of locker rooms represents, or the number of lockers represent the number of staff?
There is some for expansion as well, so in the future, when they add more, there's more there than they need today. And so as they add officers in the future, they'll be able to fill, they might not buy all those lockers the first day or when they move, when they move in.
So there's what, 20 in the men and,
I think we've got 15 or 16 in the women's.
Just then out of curiosity, if there is flexibility within the plan, when we get to the cost estimation portion of your presentation, will you be estimating on the high side or the low side for lockers or other optional installations?
So we've got the cost of everything that you're seeing kind of built out. So all those lockers are in the estimate. All those rooms will be built out and finished. If
Thank you.
If there's spaces that we can, not pay for up front, there's definitely cost-saving opportunities there, day one. Lockers can be added at any time, right? I mean,
Yes, but I wanted to know whether it was inclusive or exclusive of the
It's
optional
inclusive.
equipment.
The one thing that is a little bit fuzzy about furniture, I'll say, is I don't know how many desks and how many chairs that you've already got that we don't need to purchase, things like that, or things that you think, hey, we're going to get everything brand new when we move in. So there's a little bit of a flux space there, or cost there that we need to evaluate as we move forward.
Okay.
Yeah. There's also a child in need of care room. It's kind of the room on the middle blue on the bottom. There's a couple of desks in there. There's a kind of a couch, if you will, a chair, and a full bathroom. That's a pretty unique space that is part of this plan. IT is that brown space, kind of the building support spaces are kind of that brown tan color. So that's a large IT room, and that IT room is also going to support 911 dispatch as well. We've got some building mechanical space there, and then there's a kind of a munitions and an armory down there as well, or uniform storage, things like that, that the police department will need on occasion. We think this whole floor is pretty much dedicated to police or patrol functions with a little bit of building maintenance.
Is that the kind of the redder color is for maintenance?
That is actually, and I haven't been in that room, but that's an existing vault.
Okay.
And those stairs go up to the next level,
Uh-huh.
and that's going to be used for like record storage and things like that. So that's not really part of the function of this floor.
But the color indicates what in your planning?
That is like storage or building support spaces, yes.
The red.
Yes.
I'm calling it red. Do you call it red?
Yeah, it looks like red. Every screen's a little bit different.
Okay.
And I think we've actually labeled that room storage.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this floor? We can always go back to it. Okay, good. So moving up to the next level, this one's a little bit more complicated. You can kind of see on the north side of the building there, we've got a set of double doors that lead out to the outside. That is our new public lobby entrance. I know we have the doors on the west side, the existing historic stair. It's grand, it's beautiful, we didn't want to lose that. We do have a door there that public could come to potentially talk to some of the departments within the facility, but our primary entrance is going to be on the north side.
Chris, can you go through the colors for the legend so they understand what is what?
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick. So kind of the light tan, again, is most of the finance spaces. Yellow, again, is a public, whether it's public like someone outside the public or common spaces within the facility. It can still be secured even though it's yellow. Blue, again, is patrol, police type functions. The lightest color on the right is 911 dispatch. It also has an adjacency to the lobby for after hours use. In case someone's in there and in need of help, they can actually attend to that person. The kind of purple color on the bottom of the screen is Sally Port, which is a vehicle Sally Port. If someone's arrested, they bring them into the station that way. And there's also a booking function there as well. And then the purple, that's kind of in 3 different offices on the west and north side of the facility, that is a housing authority. The kind of lightish red color in the center of right next to the lobby, that's our courtroom. And so it's got a quick access to the lobbies for people coming in. There's also another exit from that space so that they could go see the clerk after the proceedings. And then the judge and staff, clerk staff and court staff, they can kind of come in on the secure side of the facility so they're not actually going through the public lobby to get to the courtroom before or after court's being held.
And that room would also be utilized for training or other meetings that we have, since it's right next to the lobby. If we needed to have, small city board meetings or something like that, that we could utilize that for multiple purposes.
So we've got a lot going on this floor. There's a lot of this was one of the biggest challenges and the reasons we made some of our decisions. How do we connect the public to all these different spaces without letting them go throughout the entire building? So we're kind of trying to control that access. So if they come in and you can kind of see the doors on that lightest yellow color, it's pretty limited. They can get to the public lobby, they can get to some transaction windows, they can get in the courtroom if the doors to the courtroom are open, and they can get to an elevator there. And on the kind of the south side of that lobby, we have proposing a new elevator. And the reason we've got a new elevator is that's the exact reason, to keep the public from kind of meandering throughout the entire building trying to find their way. We want someone to be escorted if they get past this floor to go up to maybe see the police administration or city administration staff, or if they're going up to actually drop off. If the police officers are going up to drop off evidence, they would go up this way as well, which is going to be stored on the upper floors.
So that elevator, that will run all the way to the top,
Yes.
and it'll go all the way to the...
It does not go to the lowest level. It does not. This is
First floor, it goes to the top.
correct.
Does it access the old jail elevation too?
Yes.
Okay.
As we get up to that floor, we're actually proposing that will be property and evidence. So someone could come in, and I'm assuming they'll come in. If it's large stuff, they'll come through the Sally Port, and they can bring it, and they do have to kind of go through a little bit of the public area to get to that elevator door and then move it up to the 3rd floor. We also have a little bit of an evidence drop-off. It's labeled bag and tag. You probably can't read it there, but it's that lightest blue color next to the Sally Port and booking function where they can drop evidence off in the secure lockers. And then the evidence tech could come and take it all the way up to the 3rd floor.
And the vault is accessed through the court clerk?
Yes. And that's kind of, you can kind of see that stair that goes down to that lower level in that image as well, that floor plan.
Is that a sliding door on the court clerk's office?
Yes. We've tried to, a lot of these plans will try to let as much natural light get into the interior of the building. So I know we've got kind of walls drawn, but some of those areas will have glass or a sliding glass type of door. So that, and it usually probably stays open most of the time, but if they need a little bit of privacy or they want, it's too loud, they can close that door and kind of shut off the rest of the spaces. It also kind of helps, we try to keep this as flexible as possible so that, in 5 or 10 years as things change and offices change, or functions change, that they could still use the space.
I'm
So-
curious about, sorry.
Go ahead.
In the drawing here, you have overlapping lines at the mail receiving spot where the door overlaps the mail receiving. What is that line for mail receiving indicating? Is it just a space indicator and not a wall or a
Correct.
bench or a table?
Yes, that line is just giving us like how big that area is. There's not an actual physical thing there. It's just a line to designate this space goes for mail receiving. And that door, if someone comes in with a FedEx package or something that's large and they need to deliver it, or the mail person, that's where they'll do it, right there. So
Okay, but that'll also be controlled access, so somebody will have to open it for them, right?
you either push the button and let them in or get up and open the door, whatever
I
you
see.
guys feel comfortable with or the city staff feels comfortable with,
Okay.
yes.
So for finance, you've got 2 restrooms for the staff there. There's not a shared unisex restroom.
No, they can be labeled, that's a touchy subject with a lot of people, but they could be labeled, unisex or family type restroom, or men and women if they wanted to, or sometimes they don't want to share and sometimes people do. So we felt like one restroom wasn't enough for that amount of people, so we added the other one. And then we also have another restroom, if you can see just to the south of that, that's in blue, for the police department, so that they have a restroom on that floor as well. What we've done is we've limited access to meet accreditations from even city staff and the police department. So if you're in the police area of this floor, you've been let in, or you have a card credentials or some kind of key, so you are allowed to get into those areas.
While we're talking about restrooms, where does the traffic for city court access the restrooms?
If you look by that new elevator,
Yes?
just south of it, there's a restroom right there for the public. It's yellow in
It's
color.
yellow.
and
I see it's yellow, right?
We had that restroom at the front of the courtroom for a long time. It just ended up being in the way, and the court functions really didn't work that well. So we ended up kind of just moving it down that hall. And they have one if they need it, but people get nervous when they go to court, so we better give them a place to go to the restroom.
Indeed.
There is no holding area. So if they come here and they're booking someone, they would have to, I guess, take them to the county facility to actually detain them.
At the bottom of the slide, the light blue, I'm just trying to read this from here. What is that area? The bottom left blue corner?
So those are sergeants' offices,
Oh, okay,
and they want to be adjacent to the roll call room,
okay.
which is that next, it has the, I guess it's like 8 people in there that could, for roll call, and they do that at every shift. They'll come in and do roll call, and the sergeant's usually running the meeting. Next to that is report writing, and it's just kind of a desk with 3 chairs on it, or a table with 3 chairs on it, built-in desk. And if they come in from something that's going on or they need to write a report, that's where they'll do it. And a lot of times the sergeants can assist them with that if something's going on or they need help or whatever they're trying to do. So they're located close to each other. And then kind of down through that door and down a couple of steps is actually where that bag and tag area is, so that if they bring evidence in, they can secure the evidence in lockers right there.
So basically, everything on that bottom end, the blue and the purple and the light purple, that's all police, and they actually either have to be keyed in
Yes.
or let in, and they're actually separate from everything else. They're segregated from everything else.
Yes.
Unless they're officially let in.
Yes.
Okay.
You can kind of see there's in that light yellow color, we've actually added a couple of glass walls and doors there too on both sides of that, just for that reason. And that's one of the reasons why we couldn't use that elevator as well. We had to kind of we have that existing private elevator, if you will, now that city staff can use. And then the new elevator, we didn't want public to come back into those police spaces to get to the elevator for accessibility requirements. It's kind of an odd thing. It's a great solution when it was done, I'm sure, but those steps and trying to manage to get into the front door would have been either some kind of a large ramp or switchback ramp or something to get people up there, which just didn't make sense since we had another entry spot.
So what you're saying is that north entrance will not have steps or a ramp?
Well, it will be at grade or have a small ramp just to get down to the accessibility for the parking and for the public to walk in. Yes, that's basically at or close to grade.
You're going to elevate the floor in the apparatus bay where the new entrance is, then,
Yes.
right?
Yes. It will be at the same or close to, well, there's an actual small step between that and some of the city offices there, finance, which actually kind of lends itself to if you're sitting at a desk and someone walks in, if they're a little bit lower, that helps you with that eye contact, so you're more eye to eye to someone. Because right now, if I walk up to you guys at the same level, I'm kind of looking down, or you're looking up, and it's just a kind of a weird dynamic there. But we can create a ramp in the back so that nobody's really walking up a bunch of steps to get from one side of the building to the other. It also lends itself real well to dispatch, so because we're hopeful, we have to price all these out, and we'll get into the numbers later. And our numbers right now, as far as cost, are very similar to the plans. I mean, they're preliminary, they're early, but we hope we can get that dispatch area elevated as well, and we can bring all their cabling and all their wires and everything they need below them, so that in the future, if they have to access that space, they can get in there and they can change it easily.
So the ramp you're showing is a ramp going down to the east, right?
We think we're going up because we want the judge's bench to be taller than the seating area.
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor, you talking about the ramp that is in
In the hallway.
the hallway between the workspace and the interview space in the lower right?
Just trying to get the elevation worked out, because there's the,
So that apparatus base a foot lower than the rest of the building. I believe it's 1 foot. Is that right, Vance? It's 1 foot lower, I think, yeah. And so we want the judge's bench to be taller. And so that ramp is only like 6 to 8 inches taller than the rest of that space.
Oh.
So we'll build up the judge's seating area, and we'll build up that ramp to get to it. And then once we do that, we can also keep dispatch elevated as well.
okay, so you enter in the north at the existing floor elevation of the apparatus bay.
Yes,
Then when you come back, the door that swings from the main office area out, there's a landing and some steps
yes,
that's not shown,
yes,
okay?
correct.
I
So-
read it the other way of that was brought up to the elevation of the office space, and the ramp was going down to the existing floor elevation for the east apparatus bay, but it's reversed, okay?
So that door with the landing and the steps is just mail delivery. So when people come in and they bring mail in, they'll transverse that elevation change right there. Yes, as they work their way through the facility, and there'll be a step in the courtroom as well on part of it. So our accessibility will be around the back, if you will. So it's nice for that judge's bench and all those proceedings for that same situation to keep that person a little bit taller So as people come up and approach the bench and they talk and go through those processes, there's more of an eye-to-eye level as opposed to the judge sitting low and looking up at someone's kind of standing over them, if you will. So it kind of lends itself pretty well to those uses.
City court is just one day a week, and you put an elevated area, then it changes the purpose that you can't use it the whole area. There's a separation that gets in the way, and for city court,
We talked about the other furniture that's in that room being modular so that we could move it and accommodate other uses. So the other pieces of furniture we planned on being modular.
So,
yeah, it just I guess I even look at the size of the room for city court one day a week, and it's very, very generous. And then to change the elevation to now separate it into two spaces instead of one,
if you
I
can,
don't see the justification for a city court to elevate that portion of the room.
so if you see my pointer up there on the screen, that
Yeah.
line would really just be that area.
Right,
Pretty small. There'd be a step right there.
right.
Which I agree with you. We're dedicating all that to courtroom, which is kind of what we were tasked to do, if you will. But
Yeah.
it could create that, just like what we're doing right now. You guys are elevated a little bit, and this makes a real nice conversation for presentations in that. But yeah, there would be, and I'm thinking it's somewhere between 7 inches would be probably our magic number, because that rise would only be a 7-inch step.
And you could do a portable thing like
That's
this and then
what-
move it out of the way when you didn't need it. That's a good idea.
That's what I was going to suggest, that,
Yeah.
just the significance of a city court, and if you're looking at a multi-purpose room, to have that much space, if you're going to use it for training or anything else, a permanent riser, and then it kind of takes the effectiveness off of having that size of training room. It looks like so far, without looking at third floor, that there's the spaces are very generous.
A lot of that for the offices, we were reusing those existing walls and
Right.
doors. And that kind of lent itself to,
Sure.
this is how big this room is. A lot of my opinion too, of looking through that, when you see a lot of that yellow, that's pretty generous for
Yeah.
circulation. The only way, and Vance will probably yell at me for that, but the only way I could kind of reduce some of those spaces is to get rid of a lot of that historic significance in that building, and we didn't want to go there either.
And then you're
So,
increasing the cost too by adding more demolition into it. So, what you're proposing to use existing walls, and what you're indicating as office spaces seem practical, that it works, that you're not cramped. So if it works with the existing walls, why remove them? I think you had the right approach. And the Sally Port, though, you're indicating raising that portion of the building and building a new exterior walls.
well, the dispatch area has to be, meet like a storm shelter, basically.
Right.
Okay. And so a lot of those existing walls do not meet those requirements that are out there today. Existing addition, yeah. So we're gonna have to do some structural changes to those areas, potentially even new walls. We have to have structural engineer review all that with us, and we're not quite there yet, but that's gonna have to be kind of strengthened or hardened, if you will, to meet those requirements for a similar storm shelter, basically. And then we'll have a generator and things to provide them power, so that that personnel that can't leave their workstations during a weather event, they'll be protected.
So is a generator being proposed as an exterior standalone
Yes.
generator?
And it will have built items around it to keep it from being destroyed in the event as well. So they'll have power. The same with
Where-
some of the mechanical. So
Where are you taking in for the main electric distribution and utilities? Is that
that
shown? I saw in the basement you had a mechanical room. Is that where you were
Yes.
proposing?
We'll probably bring water. It's probably similar to there. I don't know exactly where all the utilities are coming in right now, but we'll try to maintain all those locations the best that we can. So we're not rerouting everything with new taps and all that kind of stuff as well. If the sewer's out there and it meets the requirements for drainage and we'll inspect it to make sure it's working well. We'll reuse those same locations for all that, yes, for the entire building. We will have new mechanical systems, and we have dollars in here for all that new replacement cost, but we have not worked out like all the pieces and parts and the units with the engineers. That'll kind of be our next step. If this is a nice plan and it's accepted and people are okay with what we're doing and thinking, then we'll bring in those different layers of people, structural engineers, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers, along with civil, to start putting more information into this set of drawings and let this, progress as
But as
design
you're
does.
working your preliminary room layout, you've got to make the provision for mechanical rooms. Either, you're going to go central in the basement and have your air handlers there, or you're going to set them on each floor. So how have you planned to provide HVAC for?
We have large spaces on that third floor, which we'll see here in a little bit. There's storage up there and mechanical spaces.
Okay.
There's opportunities for roof type stuff or ventilation, and hopefully we can get some things like an energy recovery type systems. And what that means is as we're exhausting air, which is required by code, so we don't have sick buildings. So as we're exhausting air, we're actually reclaiming some of that energy. That warm air can transfer over to the cold air, and we can actually claim some of that back. And a lot of those units will sit on that roof or in that third floor mechanical space. There is an existing kind of a duct run or a chase, if you will, that's part of the building, and we're
Right.
proposing to reuse that as much as possible. We don't have all the routing yet shown on this. A lot of that kind of the old grand stair or that elevator that's there now, that space, there's some voids there that we might be able to take advantage of and get our fresh air and our air moving down through this entire building. So yeah, we still have some of those detail items to work out for sure. And that's our next, like I said, that's kind of our next step. If this looks good and everyone's kind of approving what we're proposing, then that's the next layer to get all that information into the project as well.
So once again, on that strengthening of the wall, that'll be on the east side of that wall, that whole length of wall that you were talking about?
Say that again, please.
On the strengthening of that
Oh,
wall
yes.
to meet code now, it'll be that whole east
Yeah,
wall.
to be honest, we might end up just building a new 8-inch concrete masonry wall adjacent to what's there now. That way we can control all that structure and we're not trying to beef up some of the areas that are there if it's not feasible. If that wall is strong enough and we can tie into it and reuse it, we will. But right now, I think we're going to have to rebuild because we're going to have to look at roof, foundations, and walls all the way around that dispatch center in order to achieve those requirements.
So
go ahead.
what did you include in your cost estimate, though? Because the roof is bar joist. It's not going to metal deck with gyp on it, so it's not going to meet any type of storm shelter.
Right.
So it's going to have to be replaced.
Yeah, it's going to be an entire addition, if you will, roof walls and foundations as it's needed. So we've got cost in there to do all that right now.
Okay.
The historic integrity of those spaces and that wall, I mean, I know it's there now, even though I don't think it lends itself to the historic nature of the building, but it does show us kind of the limits of what we can build, because I don't think we can go any further to the west, or east, sorry. And so we just kind of kept that same footprint that we drew in our models, if you will, to show, okay, we got to get all this stuff to fit in this space, even if it's a new wall. Yeah, we've added, I think we started with 3 dispatch stations, which those are those 5 stations at the north side of that room. We added a couple more stations, and I believe it was a request for the county to be able to have a couple 911 dispatch centers in this facility. And what that did is it kind of grew the entire addition, if you will, further south, which kind of lent itself to our Sallyport location to come right off the street and how that function works. But it's kind of a thumb that kind of sticks out down there. And that's the reason why it's as large as it is. We could have made it a little bit smaller And we had a whole totally different layout, actually. But once we added those dispatch stations, it just kind of made sense to expand to the south.
And we did that so that we would have the opportunity if we needed to expand and if we were going to dispatch for other agencies or something in the future, we would have room for that.
It makes a lot of sense if you're going to do this to go ahead and add those extra spaces, especially for this room. This would be a hard one to add on to in the future, of course, because of the nature of the structural system and all the technology that's going to be in there. I mean, it'll be state of the art. And that kind of lends back to, are we buying brand new dispatch stations or not? Which I know you've already got them and you're going to reuse them, but those kinds of questions about does the number include everything in that drawing is brand new? It's kind of it's a little bit gray, which we will solidify it, but we don't know exactly how many desks and chairs you're buying and how many you're reusing. That'll be our next level of this design process too.
We haven't touched on the layout that you're demonstrating here for the finance area. The first one I see off of the mailroom entrance is one that's called open, I think. What's the utility of that space?
So our definition of open is just an open office. So we don't necessarily control it with walls and doors and give it a position or administrator type name or finance director name. Mm-hmm. It's employees that work in that open office environment. And I think we're showing 3 chairs because I think there's only 3 people that currently are in those positions. Okay. But that's large enough to add 2 more easy with a table in the middle. I mean, furniture layouts, there's plenty of room for that. It kind of lent itself so that as those people are working there and even the supervisor over them, you can kind of see those windows. And as someone from the public comes up to that window, which we don't know when that's going to happen throughout the day, they can visually see them and they can transact with them and be able to still do their jobs at their desk. So, as opposed to getting up, moving over there and creating a lot of lost space.
So immediately to the west of the open space, is that the supervisor office?
I believe, let me see.
It's on the north wall, just west of the open space. What is that?
Let me open these up here. Yeah, we've got it just labeled. The director's office is in the corner, which would be on the far left of your screen. And then we've got a director for the housing authority is next to that person. And then we've just labeled that an office. Okay. I'm not for sure what title a person goes there.
So the director of finance is in the corner?
Yes.
So the entrance to that office is through the conference room area?
Yes.
There's not a hall?
No. That was at one time kind of that yellow public space. We added that, I'll call it a glass wall with a door for security and separation reasons. And then we ended up, it could have just been kind of circulation, or we put a table in there thinking people could use it for meetings.
And that was a request that Lacey made to enclose that and put that conference room in there. Mm-hmm. She wanted it outside of her office area to meet with her staff.
It's kind of the same for that purple office to the south of the Lacey's office. It's labeled just as an office, but they enter throughout that conference room as well. So we're kind of using that meeting space conference room as circulation as well.
Just thinking of the utility of that conference room space, that there would be traffic, there could be traffic during a conference room meeting if the meeting didn't include either the director of the housing authority or the director of finance. They might be passing through the meeting space during meetings.
I agree.
Meetings that are not with her staff and with external people, we have other conference rooms that they can meet in. This is mainly for her staff.
I see. So it could also be workspace.
Yes, it could be.
It'd be a great place to lay a bunch of files out, or if you're going through something or working on a task and people could gather around it. It would be odd if there was a meeting going on and you're getting to your office. I agree with you on that. I mean,
Thank you.
One area we haven't touched on is kind of by the evidence, the patrol spaces. We do have an interview room there. So if they bring someone in and they want to talk to them, or if they bring them over from a county holding facility and want to talk to them, there's an interview space with kind of a viewing area off of that, which means they can record the interview and have all that recording information there. And there's also a window there you could actually look in and see who's there and kind of what's going on. These interviews could also be put on limited access technology systems where someone, even in another office, of course, could watch, or maybe it's in a conference room upstairs, they could watch the interview going on as it's happening. Just to kind of, people like to, multiple people can see the same interviews. We haven't talked about that space yet, so. And they would be bringing that person in right off at the Sally Port through the booking area, separate from the entire rest of the facility.
Well, I don't see an interior door there. Is that an exterior door to get from the Sally Port to the interview room?
There's an opening. If you go through the booking area, there's kind of a void in the wall, and it's right. If you look at
I see. So there's really not a door there. There's just an entry.
Well, that's one of the, yeah, it's just cased. There's no door there. Yep.
What do you mean, access between the booking and the bag and tag area? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, booking and bagging tag.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand what the dotted line was indicating there. So it's just indicating a pass-through
Yes.
between the two spaces.
Yeah, we basically punched a hole through that existing wall and let people be able to walk through from one area to the other, yes. There's a lot going on this floor. We went through it quite a bit and rearranged and reworked with a lot of staff input about how they wanted to function and do function and could function in the future. And I'm pretty happy with it, to be honest with you. I mean, all these spaces that work together and taking advantage of the existing buildings, the smartest thing we can do and for the cost. And it worked out pretty well by the time we were done. At the beginning, it wasn't so easy, but now it's like, well, yeah, that's the solution in our minds.
And we did utilize the lobby for a lot of different service windows. So you've got service windows for the clerk's office, the court clerk, and also dispatch, all using that same lobby, which is that light yellow space, which we thought was good.
So a lot of times people are going to associate, I've got an emergency, I'm going to the police station. Well, they'll drive, or if they're out driving, or if they're concerned about their welfare, they'll come there, and there's an opportunity for them to maybe ring a bell to that main lobby because the building will be closed, and then dispatch could let them in remotely, release that lock. They come in, they're either safe in there, or if they have a problem, they can report it right there to dispatch. And so it's kind of a nice after-hours access and amenity for the citizens. So.
And also, if we have an upset utility customer or whatever, dispatch has line of sight. And so we thought that was good too. It's kind of like a little customer service area.
Speaking of that, that's a good point. All of these areas are to a resistance level that's vandal resistance, not bars and separation from people, because we don't want to show that either. But there's definitely like a pass-through and a talk-through type situation where there's security for staff members and separation there, kind of a natural part of how that's going to flow and function and work. And then doors with locks on them, of course, that someone would have to be let in. I do think anyone who gets away from the kind of that light yellow lobby area would be escorted at that point. They wouldn't just open a door and let them, oh yeah, go back and go right. Someone would have to kind of come up and walk them to the space that they're going to go to. Like if I was going to come in there and meet with someone, they'd have to walk me back. So.
And the elevator then would be a lockdown for after hours, that there would be no access to the other layers?
It's locked
levels,
down
or
all the time.
all the time?
Not just after hours.
Okay.
Card access,
Yeah.
depending on your credentials.
So someone would have to take me upstairs to go
So-
see someone else.
So it's a staff elevator, not a public elevator, okay?
It's staff elevator, but it's kind of to accommodate the public, if you will, because for
But they've got to
accessibility,
be escorted,
they'd have to be
Right.
escorted, yes. Or we're taking evidence up to that third floor.
right?
They could use that elevator as well, officers.
So the equipment, it'll be a hydraulic elevator as a storage, the equipment room for the elevator?
Yeah, it might be, they don't make a lot of hydraulic elevators anymore. You can still get them, but a lot of them are traction just because of the cost has come down so far. And then all those controls can just kind of be in the wall for that.
Okay,
And then any equipment and everything could be in a room like on that third floor. The motor, to access all the
Yeah.
motor and the housing and everything, so it's not really like, we don't really do a lot of pits with hydraulics and things like that
Yeah.
anymore. Although we might be able to get them, but the cost is almost the
Yeah.
same, so we actually don't even use them. Even when we design the hydraulics, they come in and say, it's less cost to use this traction elevator, so we use it. So, and it
Pardon
takes a
me,
lot
I'm
less
I'm
space.
having trouble hearing you. Are you
Oh.
saying traction elevator?
It's basically just an elevator without hydraulics and jacks to use to move from one level to the other, motorized. It's got a motor on it and on a pulley, and it just pulls it up and down, yes.
I see.
And that elevator, I mean, it's an expensive component. It could be $75,000 to $100,000 item to put that in. We were trying to figure out how to reuse the existing elevator, but we just didn't want people going all the way through the facility and waste more circulation space to do that. So it costs money. It's kind of a premium. The location's not ideal for the way the plan lays out, but it's probably the most economic decision we can make trying to fit into that existing building. So
but to go an extra level with the existing elevator, you're gonna have to replace the elevator anyway.
right.
So if you're gonna put a new elevator in, make the hoistway and keep the existing.
At one time, we didn't have evidence in our program. People were talking about moving it to a different site or somewhere
Right.
else. But adding that elevator and letting evidence be on that upper floor, which is the old jail,
Right,
you're saving a lot of money and effort there because all the evidence is right where you want it
Right.
with the police department. And so there's cost savings there too. So you're not moving it off-site and all that kind of stuff and trying to secure some other facility. You can secure this one.
yeah, you're not increasing the budget other than the hoistway and with the traction, would it be a masonry or would you just use drywall for the walls?
There's going to be enough masonry on the project. We would probably use it masonry
Yeah,
as opposed to steel, and then we'd have to have ratings on all that kind of stuff
Right.
because it's going 3 floors. The masonry just kind of lends itself. In a small existing facility, they can bring their stuff in. They don't have to worry about steel and getting it in the facility. They can bring in blocks pretty easy. There will be some demo and cutting, whatever's going to have to happen at that floor and then up above, but it's an expensive item for sure.
will the building be sprinkled now?
Yeah, we've got
Okay.
cost in there, sprinkler the entire building.
Okay.
Yes.
So that opens up some of the existing non-rated doors and conditions of the existing building can remain. Good idea.
We're also, if we're on that kind of subject, we're talking about lightning protection because that dispatch equipment and everyone else's equipment, tying all that in together so that we ground it all out and don't have that concern anymore as well. So we're kind of getting rid of a lot of those things that can cripple systems, fire and lightning, things like that. So all of it will be brought up to current requirements and standards.
Will you have surge protection on that equipment also?
Yes,
In
that's
addition?
we call it UPS, which is uninterrupted power supply, which is batteries basically.
Okay.
We'll have a whole battery system that backs that up as well, and then that generator will kick on and charge those batteries if power goes out from a storm or whatever reason, and then that actually supplies power to the, and that dispatch is only for dispatch, all that UPS power. There'll be some circuits throughout the building, but most of it will be for dispatch.
And those circuits throughout the building will just be like for emergency exit and that kind of stuff?
We'll do probably
Or
emergency.
Certain lights and,
Yes, we'll do
Yeah.
lighting and things like that, and we will have receptacles in some of the spaces that they could, it'll be orange or some different color, and they can plug
Right.
into that, and that'll be generator power too.
right.
So that, I don't know, we haven't gotten into the extent of how big that generator is, that costs a lot of money too, but I don't know that the entire mechanical and electrical systems will be on for the entire building if there's an outage. But you'll have enough that you could function and work. The biggest pull on generators is usually, air conditioning. So if we put this whole building on an air conditioning system on that generator would be pretty big. Usually we keep our fans on so we can keep ventilation going. Heating's a lot easier, especially if it's gas. So that's we'll figure that stuff out at our next phase.
So dispatch the HVAC would be all on the generator to keep it operational, but
Yes,
the rest would mainly heating. Yeah.
for the rest of the building, yes. So, that dispatch center is kind of going to be its own building, if you
Yeah.
will. It's just the location of it will be kind of where we're showing it, and then everything else kind of has to function on its own.
So that emergency, that backup generator on site, then it'll basically, what you said, control dispatch. And then there'll just be some other functions that it feeds, circuits that feed through the building
Yes,
to make it somewhat functional.
yes.
So, okay.
That way, if, a city administrator needs to be there in a power outage, that generator circuit will be there, and the computer will be working, there'll be lights on, fans will be moving. If it's gas-fired heat, then we'll have heat in the building because the fans don't a lot of draw. The AC is just where it gets a little bit tougher to put all that on that generator. And all that means that generator just keeps growing and getting more expensive, and it takes more fuel, and all that kind of stuff happens. And you're only using it, I hope, I don't know how many power outages you have, but hopefully you hardly ever use it. But, I know things happen, so we got to be prepared for it.
That'll be set up to run every so often?
Yes,
To
it'll
make
have a
sure that
maintenance. Every 30 days, I think they kick on to make sure they're running. We might do it every 15 days because how important it is that it is working. And then you'll have to maintain the fuel. And I don't know if you guys do that internally or not, but that fuel will have to be changed out and treated so it doesn't go bad, because it could end up being, a couple hundred gallons of diesel. We're thinking of diesel generators, what I'm thinking. There can be other things, but a couple hundred gallons of diesel fuel sitting there the whole time, it tends to go bad if we don't do something about it. So there will be some maintenance. I'm assuming you might have some generators at some of the facilities you have already.
The others are diesel, aren't they? Yeah.
It's usually got a belly tank on it underneath it, and this generator's just on top. And so we don't know exactly where it's going to go yet. Outside on the site somewhere close to the building, close to the primary. And it will have its own shut-offs and all that, automatic switchgear and things like that. Any more questions on this level? We can always come back. So this is the second floor, floor above. Top right corner is police administration. Just below them, and I know I don't have the restrooms shown in there, but those are two restrooms for this side of the building. And then the light purple to the south of that is an investigations office. There's also a little bit of space for, let's see, let me get over there so I don't misname some of this. Yeah. Kansas Bureau of Investigations, there's also a couple of spaces for them as well. And that's kind of on the other side of that stair, if you will. The light brown space right there in the middle of the building, that's restrooms, IT and electrical storage. There's that elevator again that comes up from down below. So if I'm a visitor that I've come here to see the police department, they would escort me up that elevator, and then I would be in that space on that side of the building. The yellow again is kind of circulation, mostly internal to staff members or police staff. The brown in the left kind of is all administration for the city. So I'll kind of walk through some of those spaces. There's a large, well, it's a large conference room, but we've actually labeled it small conference room. And it's kind of adjacent to the break area, which is on the corner of the building. So I think that all city staff are kind of use that break room. There's two ways to access that conference room. They could open up and those are sliding doors. They could open up those sliding doors and let that break room or that conference room be part of their break room if they're doing some kind of an event, or once things get back to normal and we're actually gathering and celebrating birthdays and things like that, that'd be a great amenity for the break room. We also think that there's going to be sometimes during the year and the day that you're going to want that just as a conference room, so you can kind of shut that noise off from the break room, close that sliding door, and open it back up for kind of an office function. Next to that, we've got a couple of spaces for public safety and code enforcement. We have a admin space to support that, and then we have an engineering office. So those three offices, and that's kind of, we've changed those here kind of last minute, if you will. Some of those spaces have changed within the city, and so we're trying to keep up with that as well. But those are, like you said, large offices. We've actually got little small meeting rooms within them. You could definitely put multiple people in one of those spaces because they're so large, but we're trying to reuse a lot of those existing walls. On the corner of the building, the city manager's office. An admin space next to them, and then the assistant city manager's office. So kind of offices kind of wrap all that. We try to get as much natural light into those office spaces, and then we borrow that light if we can to get it into the interior spaces with glass walls and things like that. The large conference room, it is kind of set up for an all-staff meeting, if you will, or an event that you need more room, more space. And that's kind of located in the center. We asked the police department if they wanted to share that space, and they still can if they walk through the facility a little bit, but they were okay not being connected directly to that, and so we don't have a door or access from that conference room to the police admin. We'll go through the police. The chief's office is on the upper right corner, and then the captain is next to him or her. We have a storage room in there. We have some admin space, and then we've got an office for the SRO and animal control. They're kind of sharing that space, and then a little bit of work area or break space for them as well. Usually what happens, most of those break spaces, they want a coffee maker, so we'll have a sink there and things like that to kind of support those functions. But we hope that they're either using this break room together. We hope people come together and just don't eat lunch at their desk all the time. So we try to create that central location. And then the police break room was actually on that lowest level, if you remember, in the basement, although as long as there's access through the doors, they could go to either one.
Kelly, do we currently have someone who would bear the title of engineering secretary?
No, but we anticipate when we hire an engineer, they're probably gonna need some support staff, someone to answer the phones, do some clerical stuff, because we're giving a lot of duties to that new position.
So you've maintained the interior ventilation shaft through third floor and second floor, but you incorporated it on the main level as office space.
Yes, as it feeds down through the building, that ductwork tends to get smaller because it branches out. And as if we needed to get to that lowest level above that ceiling, we'll figure out how to route it through. There's space there. I mean, there's some room in different areas. I mean, it looks tight now, but once we go through this another layer of that and find out what size they need, the engineers, we will accommodate them.
And that engineer is replacing 2 department head positions, so we're not adding additional numbers to our existing employees.
Yes, I understand that. Thank you.
To have 2 conference rooms, it's kind of questionable, but what it does do, it gives you flexibility for something else in the future. And it's not compromising the plan either, that you can use it. You haven't lost anything that you really needed for essential. That, again, the existing building footprint or the area is very, very generous in providing space for, the locker room. I think there's 35 individual lockers, and the size of it is not cramped. The conference rooms, the offices are generous. The floor plan works very efficiently. This, where we are now, that, you can, being designated a small conference room could be also an office space or a storage area, a file area, a lot of other uses for it.
Or like
So-
the auditors, when they come, it gives them a
Right.
place to work that we can
Right.
shut off.
So, I don't see us sacrificing any of our operations and what you've showed us that we're accomplishing what we need so far. And we haven't gone to the 3rd floor of the evidence room or storage area, which, with the addition of the elevator now, provides more efficient use of it, because you did have access to the stairs. You could still carry things up, but it was a one-way direction.
Yeah, pretty tight.
More went up than ever came down.
Now, wait a minute, wasn't that the jail up there?
Yeah,
They had to come down sometime, I hope.
yeah,
So yeah, we try to maintain that access too with those stairs so people can use them. If the elevator's ever being maintained or something's weird with it, they can still get there if they need to. But yeah, much more convenient to have that, and it's accessible at that point too for everyone. So yeah, and that conference room is large. It could easily turn into an open office space with
Right.
4 workstations in it and still be comfortable if that ever needs to be, or if the auditors come, and when we show these tables, we think these tables are kind of like what you guys are. We pull them apart, and you could create small little workstations out of them, and then push them back in the chairs for that meeting. We do have some storage space that we need for that large conference room, and it looks like we removed it, but we'll have to put some storage space back in that room so that those chairs can be pulled apart or pushed together and rearranged a little bit, as opposed to just kind of open and out so everybody can see them. We'd rather put them in a room. So
And that furniture is also modular in that large conference room, so if we need to set it up training style, classroom style, we can do that.
And it will also have all the AV stuff that they need as well. We just haven't quite got to the point where we're showing all that. So whether we do a projector or whether we do larger monitors, I mean, it can go either way. Those discussions will still be had, and that will be brought in detail and shown as well. These drawings don't actually have all that stuff in it.
So the question, this is another question for Kelly, I think, and that is that this drawing shows 3 detective offices. Do we have 3 detectives, or do we have 2?
Jerry's here.
3. Thank you.
And Jerry was very involved, of course, in Lacey too, and
Of course.
David, all of us, and
I'm just
putting this together.
just demonstrating my ignorance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, no, it's, I had to ask as well, so.
Any other questions on that level? That level kind of worked out a lot nicer and easier. It kind of just makes sense to put a lot of admin staff up there that's not directly connected to the public every day. And so they kind of naturally want to go up there, and then some of the support spaces for them. And it kind of laid out fairly quick and easy. KBI, they were a little bit interesting to get spaces in there for them, but we had too much space on one side of the building and not enough on the other, so we just kind of bridged that gap. And someone from the city made the comment, hey, just put that quarter in there so we can access the stairs. And so that's why that kind of yellow color goes down to the landing of that stair, and it worked out pretty good, real good.
So if somebody from the public wanted to meet with the city manager, city engineer, assistant city manager, would they be escorted to your office, or is there a meeting area on the first floor that could be utilized?
We could do either one, you know, and depending on what the meeting was, I mean, we can also escort them up there. We're gonna have an admin, of course, between us. So generally, like now, they let us know when someone's here, and depending on, you know, if it's something that we can take care of quickly, or if it's something we need to sit down and have a longer conversation or something, depends on whether we go up and meet with them in the shared area, or if we just bring them back.
And that extra window in the clerk's office gives us that, if we just need to, if COVID's still an issue and it's just a short, we could walk in there and visit with them.
also meet with them in the court.
Look, can we look at the first floor again?
It gives you flexibility.
Yeah, the office just north of the stairway, is that an extra office?
We're labeling that as a storage room, just for things that they need on that floor.
One that's
Is that what you?
back.
Next
Is that
to
the one
the-
in the vault?
Next to the bathroom?
That's the vault, isn't it?
No. See where the stairway that runs east and west?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that is an office.
But is it assigned to anyone?
Oh, I don't know if we have a person that actually sits there.
I think because there was one for billing and one for the deputy city clerk. I think it is assigned. And then the treasurer and the other clerk was going to be up front. So yes, they are. I believe they are assigned. So I believe one of those is Donna and one of those is Lana, if that helps.
I was just wondering if you got somebody from the public that wants to meet with you, you know, you've got those interview rooms set up now, where the patient check-in was, that you don't take them back into the work area.
Well, the two stations, there's two service windows in the finance office. And actually, David's area is the one in the rear, so he would be covering. So one of those stations would most likely be available. So there's two windows there, so we could go to that other window if it was just a short conversation. And I think that's what David was referring to.
But there's not an area that you could just sit down and get them out of the public to talk to, other than take them upstairs.
Or you could go into the courtroom and bring them in from there and walk in there and visit with them, if they didn't need to go upstairs.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of options. Sometimes they just may be coming up and giving us some paperwork or something, like handing in a zoning application
I
or
was-
something, and that you could use the window for, be
I
really
was
cheap.
thinking more on the other side of the conversation, that I'm upset with what's happened with my trash or with my street or
Oh,
with
yeah.
my general principle, and I want to express my displeasure with the city manager. And, you know, in that case, then they would just come up to the small conference room or
Yeah.
the
Or we
general
could
conference
meet with
room.
them in the courtroom if it wasn't a court day.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Look at the third floor. So the light blue color on the bottom of the floor plan is all property. So there's kind of a group of lockers there where evidence can be brought up. There's some caseworker workspace where they can be packaged correctly, logged in, usually a label's printed. They put it on the evidence package. Sometimes evidence is different sizes. So those lockers are all different configurations. Some are tall and skinny, some are wide. So that evidence or property can be placed in those lockers, and then once it's locked, that chain of custody is maintained. And they have these same set of lockers downstairs too, if they want to use those and not come up to bring them up here. They can put those in there and they lock it down, and then they're secure until someone on the back side of those lockers, which is usually an evidence technician or someone within the department, opens those lockers up and then puts them on this storage system on the shelves until they're needed for court or someone's investigating the case or whatever's going on there. I know I'm kind of showing operable storage units, if you will. That's kind of what those three big white symbols are there, but it's really, might just be static shelving, might be shelving you guys already have, things like that. Our structural engineer will verify that, you know, that area can withstand the weight, because there's a lot of items in a small area. But I know the existing jail was up there before, and I know there was a lot of small partitions and weight there, but we'll make sure all that is feasible and works. We're pretty confident it will. And then we have a more kind of building support spaces, if you will. Again, there's that shaft that's open to allow our ductwork to run through the space or the facility. We have a mechanical room, which is kind of that lighter brown color. And then I don't think we're going to need all of that for mechanical, but that square footage could change as needed or relocate within that floor. And then the other kind of pink area or red area is just general building storage.
I have a question on that property room. That's 750 square feet. if
Yes.
I read that right.
Yes.
Was that adequate? Was that adequate with the chief of police as far as storage? Jerry? Was that 750 square feet on the third floor for property, for evidence keeping? Was that, you considered that more than sufficient on the volume that you have?
I think if we use the modular shelving, or what, I don't know what it's called, but the mobile shelving is what I've seen used where I used to work, where the shelves are on tracks, they're motorized, and you can, you know, slide them over, get into something, slide them back. So you have a whole lot of shelving and very little walking space, if that makes sense. I think if we will expend that money, then I think it'll be adequate based on what we have right now.
Okay. On what we have right now, Chief, I know when we cleaned all the third floor out, a lot of that evidence is sitting in the sanitation yard in those contained secure cargo containers.
Not exactly.
Not exactly. Or you don't need to
There's
tell
a
me where they're
difference.
at, but they're secured.
There's a difference between property and evidence.
Okay.
So property, the vast majority of what we have is property and evidence that is eligible for destruction, but we haven't had the staffing to go back in and begin pulling and inventorying and then doing the court process to get it destroyed and then having the facilities available to destroy evidence. So that's a part of what we're going through right now with that audit. So to say exactly what we need versus what we need right now, once we take care of the projects that need to be handled that have been building for a couple generations.
Right.
Once we remedy that back maintenance, so to speak, on the inventory, then I think this will be adequate based off of what we're actually using for needed evidence right now, if that makes sense.
Okay. And then once this process is in place as far as doing what we need to do to move along and be able to destroy property that we no longer need to hold on to, well, that'll be an ongoing process to where we won't have that
Yes.
backlog continue to
That
build
is-
up and face
that
that down the road.
That is something that needs to be continuously done that hasn't been done for about 30 years or so. So we have a lot of work to do to get that right. And that's a part of the audit process that we're going through right now.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
not bringing in the trash that needs to be destroyed. We're just starting new with this space going forward. That's what I hear you saying. You're going to sort through and use this.
That's the goal. That's the goal. We may have to have an off-site property, not evidence, be clear on that, an off-site property type materials space to store the property inventory until we get to the point where we've worked through that project. That project, we estimate, is about a year to year and a half project. We're well on the way as far as having the physical stuff in place to get it done. Now we need to have the staffing to move forward on the rest of it.
Okay. Is the restroom or the toilet existing, or you?
That's historic.
Thank you, Chief.
It's historic.
Well, something sounds wrong with saying restrooms are historic, but yeah, that's existing there. We didn't want to remove it just in case it's needed. It might get reconfigured in new fixtures and things like that. I don't know, but we left it there because, you know, if you're up there working on something, there's a restroom. So
Oh, it's historic.
It
That's
is.
why we want to preserve it.
Historic preservation.
Yeah,
if
because it's even elevated, so
It is.
it's
saw
like a
that.
throne.
okay, I'm great with it. We're
Our
keeping it.
Our historical tax credits rest on that bathroom remaining there. Is that right? That what you're?
As long as we
alluding
can,
to?
as long as we can still flush it, I'm great with it.
Okay.
It looks like we lost the historical shower in the hallway though. So.
Yeah.
The elevator enclosure that is on the east side there, there's not a door depicted, but I'm assuming there's adequate space there in the yellow area to have a door opening.
Yeah, so that elevator will be kind of a pass-through. Down below, you'll be entering on one side, and then on this floor, you'll be exiting on the other side.
I see.
So yes, and we should have an opening on that, kind of that, the hatched walls, if you will, that's the actual elevator enclosure size. But yeah, we'll need an opening in the door to let people into that yellow kind of common circulation space. The chief was right on a lot of those operable type shelving units. You can reduce all that circulation by letting those shelves move, and you can gain, I don't know, I think it's like 40% more storage space just by eliminating all those little quarter and static shelving. They cost a little bit more up front, but it's kind of
So-
free space, if you will.
So there is, what I've heard you talk about is electrical and mechanical movement of the shelving, but there is also, they can be moved by a crank system or a.
Yeah, you
other-
could just manually turn them, yes.
If
Save a
they-
lot of money that way as well.
Indeed.
Some of the spaces that we've done just for this, and the chief's right, property and evidence, I use those terms kind of together, but one's actual evidence in the case, the other might be property that was recovered or stolen or something like that. So what that does is that I've seen those shelving units be static, someone bought all those, and then they just put them on the rail system later, and then they can use the same shelving, so they're not getting rid of stuff to get new stuff. It can all be used, but just kind of added on to as they need the space later. So there's a lot of different variables for that room, and it's a good sized area. I hope it's not full, personally. Hopefully that purging process can happen and it stays not full. So. We've seen bicycles and tires and bumpers. I mean, it comes odd items that you're trying to store in a contained area. You know, vehicles are stored in a lot somewhere probably now and in the future, so. Any questions on that level? So, talk a little bit about cost of everything you've seen. I thought it'd be kind of good to go through this program, get you guys understanding kind of what this number represents. And I mean, as architects, as you know, we can value cost based on other projects and kind of get things close. But on this project, we felt like we wanted some contractors to look at it. They're much better at knowing current pricing and what's going on today in the market. We know a lot of information from the last job, but they're doing that all the time. So we gave this to 2 different contractors, and one of them hasn't responded back yet to give us numbers, and we're trying to kind of confirm what we think this costs. The other one did give me numbers back. The first one didn't because they had a COVID crisis in their office, so they had to shut everything down, send everyone home. So the number that we got was kind of a range, and that range is based on a lot of the things you saw. We do have more information that we gave them, levels of finishes, like where's carpet at, where's not carpet, where are we storing some of the existing walls with the plaster, mechanical systems, things like that. So they came back and kind of gave us a range. So for this facility, they gave us a range between 3.8 million and 4.1.
So for the dispatch area, does that include raising all the existing walls and roof and putting a new
Yes.
new construction there?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see how they termed it. Provide dispatch FEMA shelter is actually what they stated as their pricing. And they put a number to that, $75,000 of premium to do that. Again, they don't have all the structural details, they don't have all the rebar, the steel, they don't have that magnitude of information yet, but they've got numbers in there to cover it, whether that money goes more to it or less to it, however that fluctuates out. That's what we'll do at our next phase to make sure we're still on track, so.
But they did take into consideration the demolition and the reconstruction to a FEMA standard
Yes,
for the entire section.
for that entire dispatch area,
Okay.
yes.
I would have thought a little more than 75, but that's good. That's why you talk to a contractor, not an architect.
I agree, yes. We're good to a point, and then we know when we need help, and that's when we got it.
Right.
And we do have another contractor who, they're back working on this again, and they're going to give us numbers probably mid to late next week. Not to say that these numbers aren't good, but that will just help keep confirming whether we're there or not. If we need to look at something a little bit harder, we will do that. I mean, we've got a limited information, and we've got to make sure that we got our bases covered, but they don't have all the information yet either, so.
I think when we began discussion and look at this, and after the feasibility and master plan was done, the question was, do we have enough space in the 1916 City Hall building to have a workable city facility there? And again, the spaces, in what I'm seeing are very generous. They're not cramped. It looks like circulation, and it does provide good flow for staff to work in and the public to come in and conduct business. I think with the last few months of COVID, it's been good for us to look at operating in a non-traditional work environment and the options that are available to us, but still we have space for staff and workability too. Commissioners, any questions at this point on 1916?
I'm good.
I'm glad that the department heads and the employees, they had a chance to look at this. And evidently it's been very workable, and evidently we got the space that, like the police were looking at, the spaces that they needed to be functional, and the city did, city staff and administration did, and we've been able to incorporate some flexibility into this. And the building itself, it's an old building, but it's solid. It's an extremely solid building. And this will have a very secure, stable facility that'll last a long, long time. I'm excited to get a look at this to see what it's actually going to look like.
Just looking back at our feasibility plan, renovation cost at that point was like 5.6 million total, and when we talked about working on preliminary plan, I think we were within the range of 3 million for the second phase, 3 to 4 million. Is that where we talked about, Kelly?
I was thinking 4 was
Okay.
the target.
So we're about on track. One thing that we've been able to do by looking at 2 phases, a lot of the unknown has been addressed in phase 2, that we've corrected issues ahead of time. So the potential for change orders in phase 2 is reduced quite a bit.
That's right.
We do have historic tax credit for phase 1, and also will phase 2 have portions that would be eligible for historic tax credit?
Yes, sir. In fact, that's why I came up to the microphone, is to make sure that you understand that the numbers that Chris has given you is the estimate for construction, and then we'd have to look at the eligible costs, but you can anticipate, at least $500,000 approximately that could be returned to the city through the state tax credit program.
Total for the project or for phase 2?
For phase 2.
For phase 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And
good.
of course, that number will vary depending on the work that needs to be done, but at the early estimate, that's what we would be thinking.
Now,
Okay.
Vance, on phase 1, those historical tax credits, they were estimated to be around 900,000. So we're looking at 900,000 on phase 1, and maybe 500,000 on phase 2 then. Okay.
So we're 1.2 to 1.4 million. Okay. Well, if we have no other question, concerning the 1916 building and the cost projections, we've been about an hour and a half. What about taking a 5 to 10 minute break at this point? 10-minute break at this point.
I agree.
Let's say it's 10:30, so at 10:40, I make a motion that we recess for 10 minutes and be back in session at 10:40. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We're back in session. Chris, would you like to begin?
Yes. So now we're moving on to the fire station. And the photo on the screen right now is just kind of showing the existing site. And I know that there's an existing apparatus, kind of a storage building there for vehicles and equipment and gear, things that they need. I've not been in that building. And I believe all the utilities are being served from an adjacent building or another one that's on the site. And so part of this task was to figure out how to add on to the apparatus bay that's existing with new garage overhead doors. Vehicles could fit in there, even probably more gear. They needed more square footage there. And then along with that, to add on kind of a living space, would be a kitchen, dining, living space, bunks or beds, if you will, for the firefighters, shower facilities for them. And then on the next part of that layer would be administration type offices, and then some support for training and workout and spaces like that. So kind of one of the first things we did is we tried to figure out how much of this site is actually buildable, like how much space is open for us to add on to that building, kind of knowing that we wanted to, you know, utilize that money that was used to build that and kind of grow that building more. So one of the first things we had to kind of overcome was all the utilities on the site. So I know that when the hospital, and there was more hospital than what we're seeing in that image before, that's already been removed. But there's a lot of power lines and gas and water that kind of split this site right in half. And that concern made us think, well, there's no way we can get all of that program space I just spoke about added onto that building and not get tied up with all those utilities to try to avoid them. So we talked to the city utilities and the power company, and it looks like there's a gas line, a water line, and overhead power. All of those utilities aren't necessarily needed. They were there kind of for redundancy for the hospital when it was running. And so we are proposing that those will be removed. And the largest one of all of those is the power company and their overhead lines. And David, I know that you spoke with them directly, and it looks like they're going to have the responsibility of removing all those overhead power lines on themselves. Now, we're going to have to still bring power into our facility to our transformers. However, we're going to route power into the building, which is normal for any project. But that part of the cost, these utilities aren't going to be in our way, if you will. So that was good news. I kind of wanted to take you through that so you would understand. And if you're familiar with the site, you've probably seen all that stuff out there. It also opens up that whole green space, if you will, so that you guys can utilize it better. So that's kind of what that image is showing, just a picture of that. So this is one of the ideas we've come up with. We started with 2 different buildings on this site. One building would have all the housing or living quarters or spaces next to the apparatus bay. And then the other idea was to bring admin and the support spaces into a totally different building. So we'd have almost 2 buildings on this site if we couldn't remove those utilities that are kind of cutting the site in half. But once we found out that we could remove the utilities, we decided to bring all these spaces together and combine it. So it's really one building now, which will function a lot better for the firefighters when they've got a call. They're going through an opening or through a door instead of from one building to the other to go out and fight the fire. So that's just kind of an image of what the site's going to lay out. We've got an apparatus bay addition. See, I think north is still up on this. So that would be on the west side. And then the living quarters and some other storage spaces on the right side of the existing building. I threw in these 2 just so we could see them a little bit better and kind of a blow up of what that is. So the space in the middle, which is kind of a red color, is the existing building. And then the purple on the left side would be the addition.
And that will hold what other existing equipment that we have or will procure in the future?
Yes, that should meet all the needs that you have today and the future we have not gone out and like measured all the size of those vehicles to make sure where all the power needs are and their refill stuff and everything like that. That'll be our next phase, and we will add that to the apparatus as well. And it might already be there. You might already have that stuff installed.
So what's going in the additional apparatus bay?
I don't know the exact vehicles. I don't know if it's pumpers or ladder or if it's brush type utility vehicles or what.
Mayor, it's one of those things that could be deleted. We just put it there as a drive-through for the tower truck coming from the north. Instead of having to back it in all the time, we could drive through and park it in there. But, you know, depending on the numbers and what we have to do going forward, it may be something that we eliminate. It was just, we sat down with him and put what the wish list was, but I think we may have to make some changes depending on the numbers and what you guys are comfortable with.
Is that
Well-
an existing parking lot where that purple is? That
Yes.
addition is now?
It's green space with, you can kind of see the cars just to the left of it. That's where cars park right now.
Okay.
It's green space right now.
Okay.
There's parking on this north side as well, so we thought firefighters could park there. You know, this is your apron to leave, and then public could still park kind of on the street there.
Well, if we need to cut the bay out, well, we should look at the possibility of adding a door for a bay so the tower truck could drive through
Yeah.
from the existing,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's all possibilities. And till we kind of talked to Chris and heard the number and, you know, Kelly and I told Chris my concerns and what we feel is important. So we'll let
Okay.
him go on and
Yeah.
we can talk at the end.
Some of those spaces on the right side of the existing apparatus bay actually function for the apparatus bay for things like if they have compressed air and they'll have an equipment in there to fill their tanks. A lot of that kind of gray area, if you will, we're kind of designated as that. They've got some turnout gear, which is what they wear every day, boots and a helmet and their jacket or over. That will be hanging on the wall, and as they leave their living quarters, they get to the apparatus bay, they put that stuff on, and then they get on the trucks and leave. So there's a lot of kind of small support spaces like that. There's a hose, we might even still call it a tower, but it's basically a space where when they come back from the event, they can clean all their hoses off, wash them down, and let them dry, and then they put them back on their vehicles. And all this equipment, and I haven't been in that building yet, but it has to be plugged in and charged up and ready to work. And sometimes there's a fill space, so some of their pumper trucks have water on them.
Right.
And so all of that will have to be verified and looked at. We're just not to that level of detail yet. So that's kind of just the existing building and an add-on to it. We will work with the pre-engineered metal building manufacturer, put this together and see what that would mean even to work with them so that it's their same system and they could work together or punch another hole for that tower truck to be able to come through that other if we don't add on the left side. So we'll work with them and figure out what we can do engineering-wise to kind of reconfigure this, if you will.
As long as there's not diagonal wind bracing between the frames, then it shouldn't be a problem to put in some more channels to put another door
Yeah,
opening there.
I didn't know about girts, and where the girts are located and elevations, but they can usually modify it
Yeah,
depending on how it was built, so.
And making sure it can make the turning radius to come out wherever they put the door too,
right.
because they're going to have to turn.
So usually we try to clear the building with the vehicle before they start turning, of course, because they know how to drive their vehicles, but as they come out, if they start that process too early, it can damage the vehicle and the building, so. Yeah, so we've got to give a lot of apron and space for them to be able to maneuver, which I think they've got that now. If you look at that, there's quite a bit of space kind of on the south side of that for all that to happen, but then we'll have to figure out how they connect from above. And I know, and I don't know that we've been directed for this, but a lot of those existing facilities that you're using now, they have potential to be partitioned off and maybe not owned by the city anymore or whatever's going to happen. So we got to make sure we can separate ourselves from those
Right.
facilities as well. Not just MEP type of stuff, but access, things like that, so. Okay. So this is kind of a blow up of the living space specifically. And so the orange in the center of the image, the floor plan, is all of the kind of living quarters, dining, kitchen. So that's kind of a loud area. There's a lot of noise going on, and people have different schedules. And I think the firefighters are, I can't remember if they're 24 hours on and then off, 48 hours on. So they're living here for 2 days. And they have different schedules even throughout those days. And so we kind of keep that noisy, high use area separate from as a separation between the apparatus bay and the living space. So, and we also try to make that kind of adjacent to the apparatus bay, but have a direct contact to it. You can also see just to the north of that there's a nice outdoor space, which is screened by most of the building, or 3 sides of it by the building, and we'll probably add another screen wall north of that, if you will, a sight wall, to give those guys and firefighters an opportunity to get outside, maybe even have a barbecue thing out there, amenities that they can use as they're living in the building for the 2 days. And then adjacent to that, we have kind of the bunks. And there's a lot of different philosophies on fire stations. In the past, there were a lot of open rooms. So you'd have like a bunk room, and you might have 6 or 8 people in that single room. There's a lot of gender things going on today, and the easiest way to resolve or solve any gender issue or concern is to give them separate bunks. So each of these are separate individual bunk rooms, and a different shift could use that same bunk room. So you can kind of see the smaller squares, if you will. Those are lockers. They represent lockers. So I'm thinking that we could have up to 3 shifts, and maybe they do have 3 shifts, and if they're there 48 hours, each shift has their own locker. And so what that does, it allows each firefighter to store bedding, store clothing, store whatever they need to do their job privately in their own bunk, and then lock it, and then the next shift comes in and uses that same bunk. There's also a small desk in there if they want to get away and do some reading or research, and then there's a bed. And the number of beds is consistent with what the program requirement was for the number of people that would be using the facility. It's the same with the dining, the sitting areas. All those amenities kind of support that number. The next thing we've done is in the center of all those bunks, we've added showers. So we've got kind of a bathroom/shower combo, and these showers are commercial type showers. So these coatings aren't going to be tile or something you would have in a residential scene. It would be epoxy coatings, kind of industrial coatings, if you will, on the floors and the walls, so that maintaining and cleaning a lot of those spaces is low, and it's very durable. It'll last. I've had stations that are 20 years old and they look brand new still. So all these coatings and things that we have in this product or in this project are that level. And what we try to do is we try to give a bathroom shower, 1 bathroom shower for every 2 bunks. And that's kind of a good ratio. So we have that many bunks, we add that many showers. Could we reduce some of the showers? Yes. But then it turns into everyone comes back from the event, they're trying to clean up. Most of their dirty stuff's outside, hopefully in the apparatus bay. But if they get back to here, it's either we have enough showers for everyone or they're waiting. So that's kind of the ratio of how we've got that many showers to that many bunks. The yellow space is kind of, again, circulation moving throughout the facility. We've kind of created a little bit of separation from their living areas and the admin spaces. And we've got enough offices there to accommodate the fire chief, captain, lead medic, a workroom, and an EMS report room. There's also kind of a public lobby. So if someone's coming to visit the fire station or have a meeting with maybe the fire marshal or fire chief, they would come there and kind of wait in that little lobby area until they meet. We also are showing kind of in that blue or blue-purple space on the bottom of the sheet, a workout facility with lockers and showers that support that. And I don't know if they're how this is gonna function or not, but usually that's open, or at least we spoke about that being open to other people, even within the city. Like if they want to open that up to give that amenity to someone to come and use it, that could be a possibility. And we also have a training room associated with that as well. So training for them is ongoing. They're always trying to do things better, figure out new technologies, how to use them. So some kind of space for them to be able to have a room set up to meet those needs is what that's doing with some storage. And then the last space is just mechanical, kind of in the center of the building.
If you look at the exercise room being used by other departments or available to them, then it does justify the additional restrooms in that area. If it was strictly for the fire EMS, I kind of question taking the space up, but if you are going to provide the facility for others, then it makes that a lot more practical.
And that is what we've done the last several years. When the gym was at the old city hall, the employees had to go through a training and then they could utilize the equipment. We also share it with other agencies like the county, and they just have to go through our training and safety before they utilize the equipment. And we have that in the building D now. And so we would just continue that so that if employees want to keep in shape or whatever, they have that opportunity. And it would be card access.
It'd be a lot better than it was before you had to go up through the living quarters of the fire
Yes.
department.
And it'll be secure.
Right, this will be better.
Is the public entrance then that door that is facing east in the lobby area?
Yes. And that could be, I mean, administration could enter there as well. It's not that, we can still have the locked doors, but usually the security isn't quite as great at a fire station compared to maybe the police station or the city hall even. So that, I think that, I mean, they could come through the station if they wanted to get to those spaces, or they could come through that door and park over there too. We also have parking on that north side. You could come right in through that outdoor space, kind of that patio, that white space, and enter the station there as well. Or we could just put a sidewalk and a door, and there is a door actually on the end of those offices. It's on that site plan, we're getting a little close to that existing, and I believe that's a kind of a power type connection. So as we draw on, we change this thing and pull things close, make things more efficient, we'll definitely pull away from those buildings. We could actually even pull the whole thing south, closer to the street, to give us a little bit more relief or buffer from those existing buildings. This plan, we didn't spend as many minutes on this drawing as we've done on City Hall. And so I know we have all the spaces and things they need, but there's a lot of opportunities for efficiencies on this space. As you can, if you look at their living areas and that dining areas, I mean, it's big. So as we go and we make things a little bit smaller, even the sleeping rooms and some of those showers, I feel like there's a lot of opportunities to reduce the size of the overall size of this building and still get them everything they need.
Yeah, the training room and the restroom shown for the locker room, the locker vestibule, there's
It's
a lot
big.
of efficiency
Yes.
to cut out of that area.
Yeah, I'm telling on myself a little bit, but yes, there's a lot of opportunities to make this better. Yeah,
And not sacrifice the function.
correct. Some of those gray spaces, after we start laying out their actual existing apparatus bay, we might be able to, like turnout gear, for instance, we just put that stuff on a wall. It's the same circulation they need to get around the vehicles and throughout the space anyway. But we need to make sure it all works and functions. I'm not trying to get rid of any of their spaces or what they need, but we might be able to make that better, for sure. We usually try to provide them, even to the extent, and that's what you see on this plan, like 3 different refrigerators. Because each shift
Right.
needs kind of its own refrigerator. And firefighters go as far as they put padlocks or locks on one of those refrigerators because there's a lot of time. And so they get into each other's stuff or play pranks or whatever they're doing, and it helps them with mental health for sure. But we have that shown in here to that extent that each shift is kind of independent of the other shifts, although they're still sharing the same overall spaces.
The outdoor space, are you considering a roof over that also, or is it open air?
I think it would definitely be partially covered, if not fully covered.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of nice to get some sun directly onto some of those areas, but it'd be nice to be able to use it in weather, in rain.
Were you considering this a pre-engineered structure or wood frame with wood trusses or?
They have, the prices we'll go through in a minute has been a
Okay.
pre-engineered metal
Yeah.
system.
So it'd be simple with that system to just extend the roof out to the wall line and have it all like an open protected patio.
Yes.
Yeah.
We would run the numbers, maybe a metal stud type construction even.
Right.
Exterior load bearing and things like that, because sometimes that comes in more affordable than a pre-engineered metal system. And just because this is one story and these eaves wouldn't be very high, they don't need to be very high. So we would run the trap for both of those systems and see which one made more sense.
Yeah, the advantage with the pre-engineered building, you have all that volume unobstructed with trusses to run your duct work and
Yeah.
stuff above the ceiling, or, you know, even if you wanted to do a raised area or vaulted area in the living room, kitchen area, that the pre-engineered building gives you that easy flexibility that trying to tie with a truss system limits you some of the use, and definitely, you know, running your duct work up there between all the trusses. So, but you got a lot of flexibility. Looks like a pretty good layout, you know, but like you said, there's some efficiencies to reduce some square footage and still not compromise function. The additional storage areas in between the two, I like your comment on the sound separation, but it also benefits the apparatus bay to have those secured areas. Any questions, commissioners?
Well, we're talking about the interior space and the interior utility, but if this were a metal building, an engineered metal building, would the addition of a brick veneer cost a lot of money? Would it drive the cost up substantially to consider that?
No, we do that a lot as well. The metal building kind of creates your envelope or shell, thermal and moisture, and then they just add that brick to it, and you know, it'll weep out and all those things. So it's really only the cost of the brick itself, and then of course installation of it. If we're not going full height, of course it's a lot less expensive just because it's not as much quantities. But they can use that metal building system and tie right to it.
But you can even add overhangs now. The systems are so far advanced from where they began that you could put a 2-4 foot overhang really easy, that it even give you protection to your east entrance and also the north entrance there.
Yeah, I would even look into maybe even creating a smaller roof that's down the wall some, so it truly protects someone trying to get in and out of there or carrying stuff, and not even way up high. We've done that a lot too. You know, a 5 foot overhang over halfway down the wall isn't that hard for them to do.
The end wall of the apparatus bay is probably a typical metal building end wall. It's not a rigid frame, so you're going to have another frame set away from the existing wall, and then your roof purlins could span over, so you wouldn't have to be trying to tie footings and columns next to an existing footing, set it and let the floor slab span, and then the roof purlins cantilever over your frame.
Yeah, this would be a separate building structurally on its own. It'd be different heights and maybe even different roof type slopes or something different, which could make it nice. You know, you kind of get an offset of buildings aesthetically.
Right.
And then definitely structurally, we'll pull it away, but tie it in so it's dry between the two buildings, and maybe even an expansion or something if we need to do that there as well for those two metal building systems, the skin.
Typically with the sidewall roof flashing, it's kind of a built-in expansion joint, the way you have to have your flashing come down and go over, you know, standing seam metal roofs to tie the two, so the, you know, with the location we're going to need to put the frame, it's easy to isolate the buildings. And that's a fun part of the design.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Further questions? Okay. Now,
So we did the same thing for the cost. The contractor looked at both of these buildings separate, both of these projects as separate projects, and provided us a range from 2.4 million to 2.6 million.
and that includes the additional apparatus bay.
Yes, that includes everything that was shown on our drawings. We also gave them level of finishes, those industrial epoxy coatings I was talking about earlier, that's part of their numbers. We have drawings that kind of show all the areas and what kind of finishes. To be honest, in most of those living spaces, it's just sealed concrete, which is more than ample for what their use of that space is. And then maybe a ceiling and drywall walls. I mean, it's not really elaborate. When we got to the workout areas, we had specialty flooring in there. It's made for workout facilities. We had a level of finishes for the admin spaces that are carpet and drywall and a lay-in ceiling. Nothing you wouldn't see in a space just like this, but that's what's in their numbers as well. So when I say that, it's not just the stuff you've seen. They've got more information without us really talking to the firefighters or fire department about all those finishes yet. We just kind of know that's what needs to go there, and so that's what they did in their pricing.
What was your square footage in this plan? The additional square footage?
They've got a 2,000 square foot apparatus bay addition and 8,900 square foot for the living and admin spaces. So to do the quick math, the apparatus bay was $130 a square foot because there's hardly any finishes there. It's just structure. And then the other spaces, the living spaces and the admin spaces are like $253 a square foot. Which when I saw those numbers, 253 seems a little high to me personally. And so we'll go through that with them as we move forward. We'll reduce square footage first, make it more efficient like we talked about. And then we'll figure out where those numbers are high and what they've done. And they might be that. I'm not saying they're not, but they seem a little high to me. But I don't know.
Yeah, it seems pretty high.
First thought is it's high.
Yeah, and the type of construction, if you're looking, and maybe that's including the range, if you go with a more of a standard construction and not pre-engineered. A pre-engineered building, it goes up minimum materials and installations quicker on the shell, and then you can work inside. Inside would be about the same either way. Yeah, the additional 2,000 square feet for the apparatus bay, that could be as an ad alternate even.
I mean, one of the key things of fire EMS, and not that fire isn't important, is the medical aspect. And there is so much training. The technology is growing so much every day. The importance, and Sean, where you at? The importance of having that training room, even I think it can be reduced, is essential at this point over the apparatus bay.
Yeah. I think, you know, at first I wondered about the need of a training room, but like you're saying, David, that training and having it all there, that like now, if you come down here for training, you got to bring every apparatus you got.
Yeah.
And even other outings, you've got to take every piece of equipment you've got. And by having the space there, the nice kitchen, living room area, that you can utilize the building much more and more efficient with the training area that can be set up. If you get a call, you can come back in, plus the flexibility, the way you've got it designed. The training area could be used for other functions, or if you want to have training with other departments or with rural fire, or even police, or there's a lot of uses that space would get that would be much more beneficial than the apparatus bay.
And training's an everyday thing, and we have a brand new mannequin and certain special techniques that just requires, not daily, but weekly refreshing, and that equipment can be set up to where the paramedics can go in there and practice and keep those skill levels high. I mean, we have a great ER, but our paramedics still have to transport a lot of these critically ill people 30 to 90 miles away, and they need that skill level and that practice. So that's when I talked to Kelly this morning, I was like, we got it. I mean, if we need to cut something, you can always add apparatus space on. I think Sean can get everything in now if we needed to.
Well, we're pretty cramped. Right now, we have engine 3 stored away from our facility, but
we could survive. I mean, we don't know what that figure in your guys' head is, but I mean, and we need to work with Chris some more.
And if it's an ad alternate, you're gonna get those prices, and you can, if these prices don't come in what they're estimating, then that gives you options.
Yeah, that's a nice advantage you have of an ad alternate, and much better than a deduct.
Well, one of the good things is too, you'll have the whole design. Like you'll have it all designed. Whether you buy day 1 or day 10 or 100, whatever, the design all works.
Right.
So that's really important to us to make sure that the design works, even if you don't build it at the beginning. But I don't know. It have to go either way.
and Mayor, you are correct on the training with other departments. When this COVID goes away, we'll be bringing KU training back, and we usually invite other departments to come in, so that would be a great facility to do that in.
Because I think one of our goals that we've discussed is to look at how we transition from our city limits to regional, to providing services beyond the city, and that dark blue area does meet our goal in doing that. And with your additional storage areas buffering the 2 buildings, it frees up space that you've got now in the apparatus bay that you're using for those material storages.
And we now are at 2 sets of bunker gear for every employee, so.
Yeah.
One thing I thought we could probably do is take that door, just move it further down the hallway. That way, then move this door further this way, and that way no one's coming into the station. Things like that. We'll keep working through and be smarter about what we're showing and how you guys are wanting to use the spaces. Right now, this is just an opening. But if we kind of rearrange that, or maybe that training goes on in the corner, if there's going to be a lot of outside use,
I think with what we've shown you today, we've come a long way compared to where we were a few months ago. There were a lot of questions that we all needed answers on. We needed to know whether the program truly met the city's needs or whether it exceeded the city needs. So I think we've done a lot of trimming. The historic city hall seems to work very tight and is falling within the budget numbers that we had talked about in the past. This addition is still potentially a little bit larger than it needs to be, and the dollars are maybe a little bit more than we would want to see. But like Chris said, there's design work that I believe can still help get you to where you want to go. But I think it is important for us to hear from the commission on whether what you're seeing today is better and closer to what you're looking for, so that we can figure out the steps to take to move forward.
Well, I think from where we started in, what was the date on? 2017, when the initial study was done, and our communication that was at that point and kind of went through the phases. But where we're at today, I think it shows a lot of cooperation. The staff, I think they did an excellent job sitting down and looking at the program, being open to looking at the 1916 building and the fire EMS, this type of arrangement. I appreciate all the work that they've put in and the time and effort that went into working with you and listening to us saying smaller, make it work. And I'm pleased with where we are. And I think it's a new direction for us, bringing a solution to city admin, police, and fire EMS. I think it gives us a lot of options, and like Commissioner Hayes brought out the point, the opportunity to use some brick on the living space to add some accent and not just the building, and explore, overhangs or, different roof lines like you had mentioned, Chris. In my opinion, we're going in the right direction. I think we're looking at something that's workable, and I hope the staff feels the same way. If not, please let us know. But from the 1916, the spaces look really well laid out and organized, and a workable solution. It does show a lot of thought being put in and back and forth communication between designer and user. This plan we're looking at now, I think it provides a very functional space for fire EMS, and bringing in some opportunity to partner with other departments to improve our quality of fire protection and medical protection to the public. And also appreciate you volunteering to check some efficiencies to cut some square footage down too. Usually, I know that's an extra step, but I appreciate that, and I'd like to see what our initial cost, our next cost would be, and looking at, the $253 a square foot for pre-engineered is pretty high. Even the 130, I guess it's been a while since I did a pre-engineered building, but they go up pretty simple too. But we've come a long ways in the last few months. We're we were not showing progress. We've made a big step, and I think we're going definitely in the right direction. Commissioners, Commissioner Hayes?
Well, thanks again for all the hard work, and thanks for collaborating with our staff to come up with a good solution to their needs, as well as to figure out how to utilize the space effectively. Obviously, this price tag needs to be as low as possible to justify the expenditure. So please continue to refine the numbers and find the efficiencies that are there for us, because we're pinching our pennies here at the city level, just as we always should. One of the questions that maybe you can't answer, but maybe you could just estimate, is that even locally, as we price building materials and such like that, we know that supply chain disruption has been a big impact on local pricing. So if supply chain disruption because of COVID is figured into these prices, I'd kind of like an expert opinion on how much that is. When you do give us your final cost estimate, if there's supply chain disruption that possibly is part of that, we might want to know what that is.
Yeah, Commissioner, I believe we need to make sure we understand what is in the numbers. Oftentimes we'll include inflation to make sure that that's accounted for when the project starts and when it might end. These are uncertain times, and I was out on a job site just a week ago where I was talking to the mason and talking about schedule, and he said he was having trouble just getting his materials on site. So, and that's on a project that's already bid underway and in construction. So we'll have to work with the contractors to see whether they or how much of a contingency they believe should be included because of the times that we're experiencing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've made a huge step today. This is more in line with what we were looking at. And we always have to keep the taxpayer in mind, because they're the ones, we are all taxpayers, but we are the ones that ultimately have to pay for these costs. So we continue to keep the building costs at a reasonable level, taking into account efficiencies. And that way it makes it more saleable to the public when these plans are finally rolled out, what they're going to look at and what the cost is going to be, because it always comes down to how much and how are we going to pay for it. But I thank you, gentlemen. Thanks city staff and everybody that worked on this to come up with a very functional plan that is workable. Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen.
So from here, what our next step is for you to go back, fire EMS, make some adjustments, modify the plan there. 1916 building, are we looking at, I don't think we talked about anything changing with the plan. Is it something, what's our next step there to evaluate that East Apparatus Bay?
So where we are now is, if we currently have the contract that would allow us to move forward with the design process for the historic City Hall. The scope is very similar to what was estimated before. We were assuming some sort of addition, renovating the entire interior. So we already are under contract. We can move that forward and move into schematic design, design development, into construction documents. And that way, each step of the way, city staff and the commission has an opportunity to review and comment. With the addition for the fire station, though, we didn't know what kind of scale or scope that would be. And so that's what we've been working under in that last amendment, was to get us to a point where we could show you what the program was and then the cost of meeting that. So if we once we do this last revision, we will have to come back to the city and say, if you want to move forward with this separate project, then the architectural engineering fees, like Chris said, we need to get the engineers involved. That will be one more amendment in order to include that as part of the scope of moving forward. But if everybody is satisfied with the historic City Hall building, we can move right into the next design phase right now.
Okay. I think we could, but maybe we should get this revised first.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we need to get our number tied down tight and then look at working the two at the same time. Then we can look at our options on financing too. One thing we could go traditional. Once it goes into construction, we could go traditional plans, specifications, open bidding. I don't remember if it was you or Vance, or Chris said something about working with a contractor, doing it either design build or, yeah, right, where it would allow us to do value engineering, where the contractor would work closer with you, that we could control the cost better. Maybe when you come back with the revisions on this, my thought is if you could explain the advantage, how the process would work, how we would go about selecting contractors or contractor, and then it would give us more direction on the final steps. I think you had mentioned the way to save more is to involve them in actual making decisions on construction.
So just real quick about that process, and we do that a lot, construction manager, and it's a construction manager at risk is what we call it, and they call it. Basically what they'll do is get involved with the project early. We'd have to select one and go through a process. That takes a while, weeks. Once that person's on, or that company's on board, they'll look at all this just like we're looking at it, and they're kind of firsthand looking at prices and making good constructability decisions, things like that. And then at the end of our design process, they'll still bid the project out to multiple subs. It's not like you've only got one choice. Design, bid, build is usually, hey, we got these 3 general contractors, traditionally, and they're all competing and bidding. Well, you still get that competition, but it's more of a subcontractor level, not on a general contractor level. That CM kind of takes the place of that general contractor, but holds individual contracts with the subs. The thing that it helps us with the most is it keeps someone from saying, hey, we didn't see some detail in a drawing, we're going to charge you more later during construction, change order type stuff. They've already got all that covered in that guaranteed maximum price to eliminate a lot of that internal bickering, I'll call it, between subs and architects and drawings and specs and all that stuff that happens. So that's just why I even said it earlier. I didn't know if that was something, not trying to get you guys to do that, but just explaining that process really. But yeah, we can go into a lot more depth of what that means, and if you guys are open to that. But definitely this plan will get better between now and our next meeting. And we'll go back and talk to them about why these numbers are where they are. So we'll save on square footage, I know we will on that. And then once we get these numbers kind of tied down a little bit, hopefully that square foot number will come down. So both ways, this thing will keep reducing. I don't know if there's a number that we know, or I think I know I need to meet. And you guys don't need to tell me today what that number is, as low as possible. I heard you say that. I mean, I understand that, but there's got to be somewhere in there I'm trying to at least hit a range that keeps me from maybe making decisions, and you don't have to tell me today or nothing, but making decisions that might sacrifice the way not sacrifice, but make it not function as well because I took something out or I got rid of something that was more expensive, things like that. So it's something that might help us too. when you guys talk about what this project should cost, I guess. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, are you interested in listening at the next presentation about construction management?
I am.
I am also.
Okay. And as far as cost, I guess it would depend upon, if this is based upon $253 a square foot, you know, if it could get down, you know, to, and square footage price, I never was a big fan of it. But our total dollars, if we can get to a little less than 2 million, we can take 260 out with the ad alternate. So we're talking 200,000 to 300,000, or, you know, 1.5 would be great.
I think it's pretty doable too. I don't see a problem.
So, yeah. 'Cause there's a lot of places we could use our money. It's not that we're not going to use it somewhere else, but we've got aging infrastructure, streets, so much more. But-
So much more.
Okay,
Yeah. We
Historical
do.
tax credits, once you get those, you can use those for
yeah,
whatever. It's not tied to anything specific.
yeah.
Thank you.
It's not like we're going to have a big reserve that we can use. It's already designated, but, okay. If there's no further questions from the commission? Good,
I'm good.
good. Chris, Vance, do you have any questions for the commission?
No, I just appreciate your opportunity to meet with you again and make sure that we're headed in the right direction.
Okay,
Thank you.
Well, if there's staff,
I would just like to say how much I appreciate our staff, and Trainer has been awesome to work with on this project, and I'm just really pleased with everybody came together on this
Yeah.
project, so I'm happy with the
yeah,
outcome.
I think we're all united in looking at the same thing too. So if there's no more business, then I will make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. We're adjourned.
Yes.